All right, welcome everyone to the Joint Funders Providers Council meeting, August 15th. And as to start off the meeting, as a reminder, we'll lead off with our CoC's mission, which is to coordinate all community partners, systems, and resources available with the goal of helping individuals and families to prevent, divert, and end homelessness in Pinellas County. We will. Can we go ahead and start the roll call, Megan?
Sure.
Thank you.
Make sure I haven't missed anybody. All right, Kevin Marone.
Here.
April Lott.
Here.
Steve Blank. Andy Coble.
Here.
Lariana Forsyth. Erica Jess.
Here.
Lieutenant Zach Haish.
Here.
Michael Gelazzo.
Here.
Christine Long. Ashley Lowry. Dolores Rafa. Nikki Thompson. And Judith Warren.
How does that stack up to?
I saw Judith on earlier. She seems. Oh, there she is. Judith, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then we do. Yeah. We do have 7 for Providers Council, so we have quorum there. Now we'll do Funders Council. Kathleen Beckman.
Here.
Ara Woodard.
Here.
Janina Voley. Celeste Fernandez.
Present.
Amy Foster.
I'm here for Amy. It's Helen.
Hello. Blossom Capper. Elise Minkoff.
Here.
Oh, perfect. Dana Perez.
Here.
Joe Riddle.
Here.
Julie Rocco. Elizabeth St. Pierre. Anne-Marie Winter. And Karen Yacham.
I'm here.
All right. And we have 8 for Funders Council. We have quorum.
Right, excellent. Hearing that we have quorum, we'll move on in the agenda for our first action item, April. You're on mute.
Sorry. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to review the consent agenda, which is the Joint Funders Providers Council meeting summary and meeting minutes and attendance. If so, if I could get a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. This is Aaron.
Thank you, Arrow. Good grief. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Zach. Lieutenant Haish. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. All right, next up is the rank and review appointments. Megan, can you move the agenda up a little bit? I just want to make sure I'm seeing everything. All right, there we go. So we are working to identify our committee for rank and review. We are anticipating that there's going to be a NOFO released. We don't know when. Sherry might be able to give us more information on that. But we've come up with a tentative template, if you will, of who we would like to have on the rank and review. We've also discussed having a training so that anybody who feels like they might not be able to serve because they don't know enough about the process, that we would address that up front by providing a training that would get you ready to serve. Sherry, do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
About the training, we have done trainings, so there have been trainings every year. However, I think this year it needs to be a training and then more follow-up that come of the group coming back together again. And possibly even, I mean, one good practice would be after everyone has scored their applications throughout the process, staff are available to answer questions and touch base and all of that as well. But getting the group back together after the scoring of applications to run through any questions they may have or any clarifications that need to be made ahead of time I have spoken to a consultant. We will have somebody providing extra capacity because we don't know what exactly we're expecting on this NOFO. And so any additional work that support we can receive will be useful. But then that person will also be available to answer questions as well. And so we do anticipate the process to be beefed up a bit before deliberations even occur. Yeah. And as
Okay.
far as the NOFO goes, I want to say again, I have spoken through all of the channels and there is no one knows. There are a lot of questions, and when there are questions or uncertainties, people will fill in the gaps. I will share this too. Cindy and I, we were working late one evening and just trying to see what's dropping, what's out there. And I had shared a link with her, and there was a pending NOFO around the street. It would be for transitional housing, street outreach, and treatment. And we don't know if the treatment service has to do with if it's services or if it's recovery housing. Things that are typically not in a NOFO. Transitional housing outside of domestic violence or survivor shelter has not been done in about 10 years, about a decade. Treatment services would be new. Treatment services would be welcome, and we'll talk more about that one around the executive order too. But the question is, when I shared that with her, there was a brief moment, and there's a reason which is in her last name. There was a brief moment where a link popped up and somebody did an oopsies. We talked to our HUD TA later on who had no idea this had happened. She clicked on that link and popped up a NOFO that was going to be due August 29th. And we read through it. It sounded like the same. What we were anticipating was not having the large CoC program NOFO this year, where we would go through the whole process as we did, traditionally do annually. And it stated that HUD was going to abide by that, and it was only open for folks or projects that were not eligible last year to apply, and as well as the youth demonstration projects. But again, it lasted for a second and then it was taken down. And so we can't hang our hat on that. That would be great. If the transitional housing, street outreach, and treatment services were, additional funds that had come down. But what we do know is that the administration and HUD at this moment, their priorities are ending street homelessness, not so much longer term homelessness. So I can't give too much information. We just don't know what we don't know. And I've reached out to everybody. So as soon as
So I just want to say, Sherry, that so in picking the review and rank team, it is a pretty heavy lift, generally speaking. But I will say, to encourage everybody who might be willing and able to participate, is that it is such a critically important role. So even though it is a pretty heavy lift, it's short, it's time limited, and it really is very important. I will say to Sherry that sometimes it's hard to get these committees set in advance because we don't know what the funding source is that we're talking about, who's going to apply, who's connected, and especially if there's going to be new opportunity this year with some of the things that you've just said. I know that they sometimes release them pretty quick and then we have a really quick turnaround, but we need to have a way to be able to talk to the system of care providers in particular about if there's new opportunity about organizing around some of that, because we often get a cone of silence pretty quick, that people can't communicate with one another because of who's sitting on the rank and review.
right.
Anyway, if we can just back it all up on a calendar to the extent possible or extent that you can, given the time frame that you're going to be provided, I do think that that would be helpful.
So what exactly backing up? So as soon as it drops, because we don't even know what it's going to look like, as soon as it drops, we can convene and make sure that we will, within the first week, we will have materials ready to go. That's why we're getting the consultant right now ready. We don't know if it could be 2 weeks from now, next week, or early September, a month. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But we are getting started on that. And we'll also be talking more about, I don't even know if I should raise this right now, but definitely making sure that any lessons learned from last year are carried forward in writing immediately. And because we are planning that review and rank work group that has had to take us a back seat because we don't know what to expect, but the scoring tool we'll even need to have in it. And so we'll need to be able to fast track that too. Yeah. I want to say that there was one more thing. So just in thinking about who may be able to invest that time, there will be staff support. If you were to talk to Sam last year, towards the end, I was constantly, reaching out. And so if you're willing to do it, if you have especially the understanding of, it's good to have different perspectives on the review and rank, but to have that experience and understand and the time to commit to reading through the applications and scoring all the applications and to meeting a couple times at least, that will be very important. And then we will try to accommodate schedules too. But be thinking about it, and it's also a good idea to maybe have an alternate.
Yeah. So, and we are going to send something out, right, to the group as a whole, around asking in an email, right, for people who are willing to serve, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do that yes.
Unless we can do it right now, is that what you're saying?
Unless someone's willing to step up right now and express their ability or willingness to serve, and or if there is a particularly in this group, I would think that yes, for this group, we would definitely be sending that out.
Okay. And the committee itself is made up of approximately 5 people, correct?
5. Mm-hmm. 5 with potentially 2 alternates for providers and funders.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get something out to this group and see if we can't get volunteers, and then we might have to move to being voluntold. We might have, right? Like, because we're just going to have 5 who are eligible to serve, and as Sherry said, with perhaps 2 alternates in case someone agrees to serve and then ultimately the funding source changes and that person becomes ineligible, that we would have an alternate ready to go. Kathleen?
And I think, and I would just really quickly want to add too, that since the CLC builds, NOFO came down a few months ago with a less than 6-week turnaround, which is no time at all to put together a capital project application and then go through the process that's required for the COC to determine which one project are you going to choose. And so we don't know how much time we'll have for our turnaround. So maybe it's good to get this going now, even though we don't know exactly who will be able to serve.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Kathleen?
I was just going to say, so we have 22 people on the call. Some are obviously staff with the HLA, but does anyone here want to volunteer right now to serve on that board? Especially, funders who might want to serve. So I know you kind of breezed over that, Sherry, like, well, if anybody here would like to serve, but
if you're a provider, and that's why an alternate would be so important. If you're a provider and want to serve, and you may, if the application comes down and it turns out not to be a project that you would be, applying for, it would be fine to serve for that.
So just a question, does it have to be someone on this call, or can we recommend staff to do the work?
It does not, Karen, have to be somebody who is necessarily on this call. And generally speaking, yes, it could be staff to do the work, as long as there's not a conflict. then yes, that would be acceptable.
Okay, so from the county, I just checked Dominique is willing to be on committee from the county, if that works for the group. Dominique
She'd be
Randall.
That's great.
Maybe this is Arrow. I can check and see if I'm able to do it, but I might be down to follow back up on.
I'm sorry, Errol, who did you say?
Myself. I said I'm a maybe though. If you don't mind, I just need to check with my director on that to make sure. But I should be able to do it.
Thank you both for considering that, putting that out there, and thank you to Dominique. Yep, I'm available too if necessary. I've done it a few different years.
Sherry, I don't have the email up in front of me, but the the 5 seats. So we for sure need a provider. We for sure need a funder. And what were the others that we outlined on that sheet?
A leak member, lived experience, which we believe we have,
Okay.
and a data and
Data
system
and
performance.
ESP, yep.
And so I'll be reaching out to Sam about that too. I'll be in the meeting next week as well, presenting, so we'll be putting that out there.
Okay, I certainly would be willing to serve as an alternate if Directions for Living isn't applying or isn't a part of the application process. Then I would be certainly willing to serve as an alternate for the review and rank.
I'll also throw out there that Dominique is also on the DSP, but
so maybe if Eric can serve, that if Eric can serve for the Funders Council, then maybe Dominique could serve as the DSP.
Was Helen raising her hand to serve?
I did, but you said what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
That Dominique sits on DSP, so if we needed someone, maybe she could do that part of it. And so I got funder, provider, lived experience, DSP, and I'm still missing one.
The 5th seat was going to be an open seat, and so that could be general membership, a board member. It could be somebody from the advocacy committee. I mean, Kathleen just mentioned her availability. Also, it could be, think about people anyone who's a CoC member, who may have been on the board in the past or have participated in committees, who does know the process very well and would be a strong member. That would be another consideration if we can get them on board. I mean, I have some ideas.
And since just ask a question, since we don't know what the scoring will look like or any of those things, so typically I sit on the scoring for the DSP side of it, like not the full application, just the outcome side of it is what I normally do with, it's usually myself, Dominique, and Sam. Would that be an issue? Do we know if that will still be the same? I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't know that would still be the same because I mean, just my first experience with that was this last year. And basically in a NOFO application in the past, you had to have a good chunk of it had to be objective criteria. So it wouldn't be subjective. It wouldn't be, I read this and I feel this way and this is where I'd score it. It had to be, between this number and this number, did you meet it or not? And anybody could score it the same. So it wasn't up to judgment. So it was interesting to go through that process last year and just be like, well, why are we bringing all these people together to go through what anybody could do? I think the intent was to relieve some of the work from the actual committee members who may not have an interest in looking through performance criteria. I'm not really sure.
I can't tell you the background. I can tell you I've done it a couple of years. This year was very different than the last, I think, 2 years the 2 years previous that I'd done it. But the scoring was different, completely different. It was not subjective before at all. It was, are they meeting their performance measures? Either they are or they aren't. They get the score or they don't, and that's it. And I think that has more to do because on DSP, which are the members that were scoring that, we do the HUD, the performance.
Right, right. And those questions, yeah, those benchmarks that already, or those performance measures that already gone through DSP at that time. So yeah.
Okay, so it sounds to me, Sherry, like we have quite a few people. We might even have the full committee almost.
We have 5
stacked,
people.
including our alternatives. So if you'll record that, maybe we can get something out to the people who've suggested that they're interested, get confirmation, and then it looks like we might be ready to go to start with training and whatnot.
Awesome. This is a good
And
council.
Yep, backups are important too, you know, substitutes.
Yes, we'll need to look at backups.
Yep. Okay, Kevin, I'm handing it back over to you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Sounds like we made some good progress there. So we will move on our agenda to prioritizing our strategic objectives and survey results. I want to thank everyone that took the time to complete the survey to help us with this part of the meeting. So are we able to pull those up?
Sherry, would you like me to share this
Wait,
version? for
Yeah,
the-
let me send this to let me ask the group very quickly. This
Okay.
is at a glance, or we can go through what was in the meeting agenda packet, which had everything, all the responses. It's not terribly long, but this right here basically breaks down the highlights.
I would say we start with the highlights.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And so we have the highlights, just put this together. Apologies for any typos. We've been working, we received these just last week. And a little bit about process here. The gap analysis, this is going to serve as an excellent needs assessment and assets assessment as well, of what we have and what we are lacking. And so these all come from those 7 areas that Dr. Freeman Gerhardt had put together in his PIT report. Those areas were best practices, but we knew even within the HLA, like there were some things within HMIS that we know happen, but may not be apparent to someone on the outside who's not in a part of HMIS. And so we put this out to all of the providers and funders for your feedback to find out what is already happening that may have been recommended, so we know what's going well, that we are doing best practice, and we can say, yes, let's keep that going. And then where are some of those gaps? This is going to be compiled into, and we have the PIT report, which covers a gaps analysis. I mean, it has at least the majority of what you would want in a gap analysis, but also doing an overlay with that with more HMIS data and something a little bit more digestible. So showing the system flow, where there's some bottlenecks, and what inflow and outflow looks like, what lengths of stay look like, and getting all that information together so that it can be reviewed and then coming back. So we discuss this. This is going to go to DSP to look at the full gap analysis. And then from there, it goes to the Board of Directors for in September to be reviewed, that gap analysis. We take that information then, and I believe we come back to you and LEAK basically would be the 2 primary entities to be reviewing this and ranking and rating where you want, what you think are the most important things that we should be looking at over the next short term and then longer term for our strategic plan. And we can have a more participatory process around that. We were not able to set up a whiteboard or Post-its over online for today. But so, yeah, this is the highlights. Under population disparities, I don't know if you want me to read this out or if you're able to review it.
So this is just an aggregate of every summary, a collection of everyone's scoring.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Scoring and some of the there was also descriptive material given too.
Right, right. So whatever we said we already had, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I have my hand up, but I'll lower it. But you know what we have, I'm reading it, and we may have prevention,
Right.
diversion in high-risk areas, and engagement with faith-based community organizations or whatever, but it's not adequate. I would say
Right.
it's not adequate. And so I don't know how to read the what we have. Certainly we can always use more of everything probably, but
Yeah.
I want to know how we're looking at the what we have, because I think there are some inadequacies that and not that it's anybody's fault except funding, but whatever.
Well, I don't,
That's a good point.
I don't think the survey went into like the volume of what you had it at. It was just simply whether you had it. So I feel like that's a secondary part of this. You know, um, data and system performance might be able to provide what we have of this in HMIS.
Yes.
But then I imagine there's some things on here that we have that are not captured there.
Right. And it's not, I mean, and we're also relying on only the folks who responded to the survey too. So it's limited to that. There are multiple pieces that go into the gap analysis. And so we wouldn't rely on just one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, also I wanted to say, Sherry, that, with the survey that came out, the thing that struck me, right, is that we didn't have the opportunity to also kind of talk about, and I know we can't cram everything into one survey, so maybe it's a secondary thing, as you've said, about families. So, I know I'm a broken record about families, but we have, I'm being told, right, time and time again, that we have 56 families with really little kids, high VI-SPDAT scores on the streets of Pinellas County. And right now, like as we sit here, like to me, it's like I don't know how we're all going home and going to bed tonight with that knowledge. With that said, it's like I don't feel like it's captured here, right? Like if that we have a gap of family shelter, emergency shelter for families, we have a gap, right? And so there is a whole lot of time spent, it seems, every week with a whole bunch of people, I'm not sure the right people, but people nonetheless, trying to navigate that we have 56 families, 58 families, whatever the number is, with littles, high VI-SPDAT scores on the streets. So I just want to make sure that what we're getting in the gaps analysis and or needs, right, really does represent what it is we are experiencing on a daily basis. Like there's no shelter for families. Like
Right.
that should be in all bold, all
They're
caps on this
full. Right.
document.
Right. And so that would be, like Kevin was saying, more of the HMIS, some coordinated entry data as well. And also our HIC. So housing inventory count, that would include emergency shelter for families, and we can compare that to families that need it. The number of how long it takes for someone to get through coordinated entry into rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. We have those, that material is what's supplementing the PIT report and this assessment here, which was just around those recommendations that were made.
Okay, so
It
if I'm
won't, and it
understanding
still won't be perfect. I
right.
promise you that.
Okay, but if I'm
It'll give us
understanding
some
you
discussion.
correctly, Sherry, if I'm understanding you correctly, this document and a supporting document behind it is going to go to DSP. And DSP then is going to add to what the data is telling us, which is in this example, we have 8 beds for families that are occupied for 24 months at a time, and so we have 56 families or whatever the number is with little kids. Like we don't have enough, and so that then would go on to something that would then come back to this group as a priority or a gap.
As a gap, yes, as a gap. And then the priorities are determined by this group and league.
Okay.
And up. But I want to add, so this HLA staff that are HMIS and I are putting together this gap analysis overlay to supplement what's in the PIT report. It goes to DSP. DSP by charter is overseeing the gap analysis. That has not happened. So what we are doing is staff supporting it. We're putting together a report. Next week, we're going to get input from DSP on anything that, could be added to it, or if there's different interpretations. And then we'll finish that out. And then it has to be approved by the CoC board and then submitted.
All right, I just want to make sure that it's not exclusive, that DSP or whoever, HLA staff, whoever's looking at this is not exclusive to just what's listed here, because clearly what is glaringly missing from this document is we don't have enough family shelter, right? And that we've got lots of kids on the street. So
And April, that's another reason why it was so important when we saw these recommendations. My concern was Dr. Gerhardt is great, wrote a very lengthy analysis of the PIT report, of course, and it keeps growing. But those and a lot of recommendations, and we just noticed that with some of the recommendations, we knew some things were happening that may not have been captured, and were more best practices and actually being informed by data that were in the report from one point in time, and that we don't want to rely on a researcher an analyst who was reviewing data to provide us with our strategic direction entirely. It was great to have that, but it's up to us. It's up to the CoC to decide what the strategic direction is, and there are more data. HMIS is year-round information to add to what happens on that one point in time count.
Carrie, I got a question just on that, to that point. So talking about like correlation stuff. So I just pulled up I think the most recent weekly shelter bed report. So it shows there's like 11 family units our family spots available. There's, 56 on the waiting list or whatnot. So I think maybe one of those other gaps and needs is looking at like, what is that barrier that we can't, at least aren't getting 11 of those 56 in there? Are there restrictions on the programs? Are there access points? Is it not located by where the people, have their kids enrolled, or like we have 11, at least it's not 56, but then on that other level, looking at, how long, are they staying an extended period of time there? And is that a gap on that end that we can work on addressing in a strategic plan to better utilize the beds that we have, be able to get folks out of those units and frame up for others in a more timely manner too. So that was just one, point I was just looking at. That's where I get stuck on. It's like,
okay,
but
and
a
I can
funder's
help with
perspective,
that.
you have, obviously it varies from day to day. But if I'm looking at
It does.
a funder, it's like, okay, so what's preventing us from filling 11 beds? What are those barriers? And is that something that we can also address in strategic plan? And that's just one type, but the same thing for, individuals.
Well, and how long have those 11 beds been empty?
Right. Could have been a
that's-
day, could have been 3 months. We don't know.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. So there's a couple things. There's a shelter module that's within HMIS. It goes into business putting together data can be
Right. If you
consuming.
find on average that the 11 beds have been empty for 2 days, that's very different than if you find on average the 11 beds have been empty for 45 days.
Right.
Exactly.
It is a point.
Right.
So when that shelter report is pulled, that information, there are the reason for those 11 beds is because a family's been referred to the shelter, and so they have 24 hours. Sometimes they'll reject, and then another referral comes in immediately. The bed is offline for renovation, and that's not going to show up in that report. That shows up in a different. It's just the reports don't talk to each other. That typically is not the issue, though. Typically, what the issue is that someone has just left and a family's already been referred, and they're in the enrollment process. And so the time that report was run, of course, it was from like 24 hours prior that information is showing up. That bed may have already been filled. And that's why we are retiring that report and moving towards the WellSky app, which is more real-time data. Still, though, with the WellSky app, would definitely not just send somebody over and expect a bed, because you don't know if somebody's in the waiting room right then, ready to go in. That's more for individuals, but that's something that I think the way that this report, I don't know, there's different ways to try to share the definitions, but that's a point that people seem to get really stuck on, and it is. I have followed up the last several reports to find out, okay, what's going on. We went through each of the beds, family beds that were available, and we had answers for every single one of them. There were families who were going into them.
So there
Thank you.
really isn't 11 beds available? Is that what you're saying? Those 11 beds are actually in progress or something?
Right.
And so,
There's not really 11 beds available.
and so
Right.
is there really 56 families with little kids and high VI SPDAT scores on the street? Or do we also have to do some kind of funny math to say 56 minus 11 because they're actually on the
We have to do
rank
some
with 11
funny
shelter beds?
math because it includes the families who are in motels. So not on the street, but still on the shelter prioritization list. And so that's the other piece that we have to work out, is getting that number correct. Mhm.
Okay, that was very helpful. Thank you. I mean, and I was obviously, I'm at all these meetings have more intrinsic like background knowledge, but if I'm with someone at a commission meeting looking at data, I think that's important, at least that we've explored if there are barriers that's preventing people. Like, for example, with all the different access points, we have all these different shelters and stuff, especially like individuals too. Not necessarily knowing exactly how to access those. Like I don't know if there's a place that has like, if you need to get into this shelter, this is the point of contact, or you have to have a referral from XYZ, or it's only for paid referrals from whatever city or thing. I don't know if there's anything to that to show like how we access what's available.
For families, there's a process. For individuals, there are access points as well. And then for veterans, there's a special access point. So I'd like to talk more about that maybe offline to find out if there's something we can put together to answer that question better.
I agree. I would like to do that, Sherry. I really would. I mean, outside of Safe Harbor, right?
Yeah.
You can show up and the barriers are pretty low to get in. For an individual, right, to get into even Pinellas Hope is very, very difficult, and there's very few opportunity there. So it's not exclusive to families that the process can be very difficult. It also includes our very vulnerable adults as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next steps and timeline on this then is DSP, their next DSP meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for the gap analysis, for the more complete. But we wanted to share this needs assessment, or what was collected through the survey. And if there's anything that you see that's missing here, or to add on the gap side, or missing from what we have, that would be if there's anything that's sticking out to you.
Well, we've just given you a handful that's sticking out to us. I hope they've been recorded.
They have.
Okay.
I think I saw ADA accessibility type thing on here, but I think that's another one we've talked about with aging and physical need limitations of population.
As it relates to shelter or
the system overall, obviously the digital divide to some extent on that, but also, that the ability to get to shelter for one, like let's say if it is Pinellas Hope, for example, like how is one getting there in the morning, in a wheelchair and things like that, or what have you, and then the access just in any of the shelters too. So I don't know if that came through. I thought I saw something about ADA. Maybe it was in the broader one.
Helen has her hand up.
Thank you. I kept going back and forth, but Errol kind of just said what I was thinking, because we have gotten some concerns raised about ADA. I think that's a huge gap as it relates to shelter, individual and or family for us. And then one thing I wanted to go back to, Sherry, that you said, because I guess whether it's the report that we all used to receive or going into business objects, it's only as good as the provider closing out the bed. Because if there are 11 beds and they have been referred over and the family is coming in, I think for us, and I know because you all were getting emails from me every single week, like, hey, this says there are 11 beds. Help me understand. Do I need to reach out to an agency that I'm funding? I want to know, why are we funding them and the beds are open? That helped a lot for the individuals, for families. I always had that question, and it does come down to that, but maybe some people are being referred, but if the beds are closed out, then nobody can see that on there. So it really doesn't matter if it's a matter of it being referred or not. It still looks like, as a community, that we have beds open and they are not filled. And so I don't know how we fix that.
I retired the report for that reason. I felt that the report was misleading because of the way that it is set up, and it's very difficult to give because of the way information comes out of HMIS, to give a real time. Now, the WellSky app is the closest thing. So for street outreach, that is going to be more real time. It does depend, though, on the shelters, the providers, closing it out.
So that's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to, since everybody is here, is that ultimately the WellSky app doesn't matter, that because it is real time. So if they don't close that bed out, we're still going to see those 11 beds open, which is what we were seeing, was that those beds were open because they hadn't yet closed them out for whatever reason. But we're still going to see that as a community. If I go on the WellSky app, look in there, if the provider hasn't closed that bed out, then it's still going to show, like, we have 11 beds, 56 people on the wait list. Why do we have 11 beds, right? So I think I know you and I've talked about it, kind of how do we fix that part of it to make sure that we're not showing that. Mm-hmm. The individual side, we know that there's space at Safe Harbor. We know what we fund, so we get a different report from the agencies that we fund. But for the family side, I think that we don't have anybody sitting on a wait list to get in shelter for individuals. We have people sitting on a wait list for families. And so if we keep showing that as having open capacity, then I guess that's a part that gives me the heartburn.
Yes, me too.
I'd like to, I'm going to talk to the HMIS. I know that they've done some trainings and they've offered for anyone who may not be street outreach, right, to join a training. I'm going to reach out to them again and try to get whether we can schedule some time during this meeting or outside of it to really go over that, because I do think it's it should be a different look. Yeah.
And that requires you to have HMIS access, right? Because it's part of it. It's in the system.
No, there's another method to get through. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we would want, just because we always say, because we would hate for like street outreach team to send over an individual to a shelter saying that there's an opening here at this time, and the information is listed there too, like eligibility requirements, what time is open, how the referral is made, is all in that app with the number of beds that are available or not. And we would still, I would make a call, because you don't know if it takes 30 minutes to get there. Within that 30 minutes, somebody else could have been in the lobby. So they wouldn't have been entered into HMIS just yet. They could be in the lobby waiting and things getting prepared for them to come in for intake. But it doesn't have that 24-hour lag at the point in time that it was run.
All right, I think we should take it offline, Sherry, and get some people who are willing to come together to really try to, take this apart and really understand the complexity that you're trying to describe to us here. Because we really do need to be able to, at a glance, see those of us who are working in the system every day, like when it looks like there's 11 beds and we've got 56 families, but we got 56 families that really aren't on the street, but it says they're on the street, but they're not really on the street. It's like, we got to, we got to create a cheat sheet then or something so that we can effectively, as the advocates, work with the system as it is for these families and other vulnerable adults and all the people, but in this case, the families.
Mhm.
Data gaps. All right, do we want to, does anyone want to, do we want to take the volunteers for that committee now and here? Or do you want to send something out?
I volunteered to be on the committee, but I would assume, Sherry, that you were going to want to send that out.
Yeah, that way you can more easily track it. Okay, well, look out for that email from Sherry or Megan, to, and if you have a voice here, please join so that we can ensure it's, representative of all areas of our system. Okay, any other thoughts, comments on this topic? Appreciate the great conversation in that space and look forward to drilling into that a little bit deeper. Okay, we're going to shift to our next agenda item, which is an update on potential legislative impacts. Arrow and Sherry.
Hello, I can start on one part. I'm going to put something, I think, in the chat. I can get it for the it says I can't. Oh, because it's in use. Hold on just a moment. Let me see if I can drag this over.
Arrow, I can't hear you very well.
How's that? Better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. I just put the same thing in the chat here. So one of the federal or national organizations, NARO, put out a little summary cheat sheet on where things are at with the budget process at the federal level. So you can see in there I just put it in the chat if you guys can open it, or I don't know if I can share my screen. I want to take off of the other one, but basically the homeless assistance grants look to be holding fairly steady. The House and Senate, the Senate is above the House funding. The House funding is a little bit above presidential funding, but also the presidential funding did not zero out. However, with the community development block grant funding, it is the president's budget was zero for it, but the House and Senate are very close to current levels of funding. So that's a hopeful side of things that hopefully we see on both of those both of those houses that they're still supporting that program. And then
Hey,
on
Arrow,
yes,
I don't see anything in the chat.
you don't
Can you
do
try
the Word document?
That's what
Let
I
me
was
see
going
if
to
it'll-
share. Yeah.
Okay, it'll let me share. I didn't know if I had
Thanks.
access to share. Sorry. Do I have
Okay.
access to share now? Let me see. No. Maybe not. Okay. How's this?
What if you sent it to Megan and she could share it or something?
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So as you can see here, so it's fairly steady. Actually, the Senate amount for homeless assistance grants is a good jump higher. CDBG is about level if you look at House and Senate compared to current year. So fiscal year 25 is funding that we actually use starting this October. So the 26 is what would be hitting October 2026. And then the home funding is got less support. So both in the president and House having that zeroed out, the Senate is still holding on for some support on that. There are some bills or some legislation floating around about another revamp to the home program. So I think that's actually a hopeful note that maybe if they're looking at revamping it, it means that they'll still keep it around. And then there's also another significant let's see, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute and switch my screens here. There is I can share this document here. So this is another thing that came out recently. It's got a whole bunch of different things about different housing proposals that are floating around. I think this came out through NeighborWorks, if I recall. I got it sent to me from someone. There is some potential looking at some more flexibility, kind of streamlining processes for some of the funds, which may be a good thing if we get some ease of use. I know you guys using CDBG funds. Oh, isn't that sharing? I'm sorry, I thought it was. Not there, it's not the easiest funds to use, so perhaps maybe that will be helpful. So there's a bunch in here about housing. It looks like they are looking at potentially going back to funding more the opportunity zones, which offer tax credits in opportunity zone areas for private sector to invest in housing in those areas. There is a big section on manufactured housing, which this was a push under the other presidential leadership as well. And that does impact our county a lot because we have, I think still over 100,000 mobile homes in Pinellas County. I know we've got a significant amount in Largo as well. So that's something to keep an eye on too and see what comes out of there. And then obviously the one that I'm sure most of you have probably heard of too, just to bring to light, and Sherry can probably touch on this some more, is this new executive order that came out in July. We're kind of seeing this play out up north right now. But this is basically saying, yes, we'll invest more in homeless services, mental health, and substance treatment. However, it is taking much more of an institutionalized approach to it. It is kind of overriding housing first and really going back to more of those criteria that you must be clean of drugs and sober and so forth for some of these services. There was also a component in it, I think toward the very bottom, if I recall, that talked about the sharing of health information with law enforcement from homeless service providers. So that's another thing that we're not sure kind of where that's headed. And I think that's probably a good time to turn over to Sherry if you want to add on this, Sherry, because I'm sure you probably want to touch on it as well. And I can stop sharing.
I hope everyone's read the executive order. If you've only read the news about it, I know that Miami-Dade, their CoC, came out with in full support and saying, I'm not going to have a statement on that, but for their reasons. And basically saying, yes, we welcome more treatment services and more opportunities to reduce street homelessness. And we're doing X, Y, and Z about it. But basically put out a press release that fully embraced this executive order. When you read the actual order, though, it's definitely criminalizing homelessness. When we look at our PIT report and we look at the data we have, and some of it's chicken and egg, but besides that, the top 5 reasons for homelessness is not because of substance use disorder or mental or behavioral health. And there are plenty of people who have substance use disorders who are housed. And so it's much more than that. It's about affordability and other reasons. I put in the chat, the primary executive order, there's the language there, and then relevant background, the Cicero Institute appears to be, it'd be worth looking into that website to look at some of the policy recommendations that they're making around homelessness. It follows exactly to a T what is in this executive order. Civil commitments, involuntary civil commitments, and increasing institutions. Going back to prior to deinstitutionalization, that's a lot to be looking at in the future. But they also have a model legislation that was used in Missouri that, Florida, of course, we have HB 1365, but Missouri's goes even further in some areas. And so that would be something to look at. It's like just a couple pages. And so if you start seeing that pop up in Tallahassee or anywhere else, I think that we need to be aware of it, what may be coming down, and what our response could look like. but there's definitely a focus on ending on street homelessness and short-term solutions, not so much the longer term. And that's from the executive order and from a lot of the policies that are coming out of the administration. But as Arrow said, it's surprising with the House and the Senate appropriations and THUD bill, THUD going through the way it has, there were a lot of recommendations from the administration that were rejected. So we live in interesting times. Kathleen?
Thanks. I just Googled up. Arrow had mentioned the opportunity zones for, this legislation and stuff. And what I remember from my time on the council is that downtown Clearwater is an opportunity zone and it was getting ready to expire. And so, AI overview on Google says this big, awful bill has made the opportunity zone program permanent feature, and that the ones that were going to expire at the end of 2026 are now, extended, and that they're going to have redesignations taking effect on January 1st, 2027 and lasting for 10 years. And so, those capital gains deferrals and all that stuff, it says a stricter definition of low income community for future designations is tightened. So, I mean, maybe it's something that we as a CoC need to learn more about if we're going to advocate for things, or, it's just, I thought they were all gone away and I didn't know this was part of that big bill. But yeah, it's just, I know we're tightly packed in Pinellas, but something I wasn't aware of that. So it's good to know. Thank you.
All right, any other comments on this?
I can't see the agenda, so I don't know if it's somewhere else on the agenda or if it was being covered here, but there were a couple people that we wanted to hear from that might have a better lens or a better view of some of the implications to some of this, which is here we go, right here. So, maybe Lieutenant Hayes could I understand that some of the data Lieutenant Hayes was looking at, there doesn't really seem to be a significant change year over year, but hearing from Lieutenant Hayes about some of the stuff that we're reading about in the newspaper, in particular, right? Like media often skews things. It's like, what's real, what's not real. Hearing maybe from the school system about what's real and what's not real. And then the city of St. Pete, again, all three getting pretty significant media coverage on things that we care about. And I don't know what's real and what's not real. So if we could hear maybe from some of that.
So I'll go first, since nobody else wanted to. I don't have a lot. What I will say is that, in relation to the overcrowding with the county jail, the Pinellas County Jail has been overcrowded since arrest procedures and interactions with law enforcement, and everything returned to normal post-COVID since about the middle end of 2022. Courthouse procedures and everything went back to normal, and the jail count has been over capacity since then. They're built for just under 3,000, and we run anywhere from 32 to 3,300 a night. What else is you're exactly looking for? Reference the sheriff's office or our take on anything?
Well, for example, and this was in a different article, Lieutenant Hayes, that the city of St. Pete was making arrests under the no camping bill. Has that been your experience? Are you seeing that at the county jail level, that arrests are being made under the no camping bill?
So there's no way to track. There's no designation to track an arrest made under that, because the House Bill 1365 is not a specific law that is being violated. House Bill 1365 basically leads it up to the arresting officer's discretion in order to make an arrest on some sort of existing trespass or existing posted no, you're there outside the hour sign. So trying to track that is impossible. What I will say is that I track the misdemeanor arrests, the ordinance arrests going into the county jail every month, and we look at it, and the numbers always, there's kind of like this little bit of fluctuation. It always kind of goes up a little bit during the winter and it drops a little bit during the summer. And I haven't seen any deviation from that indicating that there is any egregious like mass sweepings or anything's going on. I can only speak for the sheriff's office and say that we're not doing anything like that. We are doing this in a pro engagement education type outreach support thing. Are we arresting people that are in violation of posted laws and things when they haven't gotten the hit on the education side of it? Yes. And every agency is. But as far as there like being some huge swing in demographics or population of the jail, just we haven't seen it.
I have a question, Lieutenant Hayes.
Oh, what's up?
So in the Tampa Bay Times article, it said that there were about 30 to 40 people being arrested and removed from the Pinellas County Jail each day. And so I'm wondering, where are those people going? Who are they? Where are they going? I fear that they may be, brown people that are picked up and taken to, that alligator Alcatraz camp.
I don't know what your question is.
The question is, if those are working people from Pinellas County that are being rounded up, they are probably going to impact our families here in Pinellas County and the children. If somebody who's an adult is rounded up and has been earning an income, most likely they are, and taken away, I think we need to know that. If 30 people are working people associated with families and children are being removed from our county every day, what does that mean for our CoC and our children here?
So Pinellas County Jail is one of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Pinellas County Jail is one of the contracted entities with the federal government for these ICE holds. I don't know specific numbers. I don't know. I'm not even. I was looking.
The newspaper said I think it was about 30 to 40 a day. I mean, if anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something that came from our public information office or the sheriff was quoted in the Times, then I would rely on that as accurate information. But I don't have any specific ICE numbers or anything like that in front of me, and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't see a report that would be able to run.
I think it's, I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal. And I think, and I've reached out to some reporters to try to get those questions answered. And, even, do you know how many ICE agents are in Pinellas County right now? Do you have a ballpark figure or anything?
I have no idea. That's way outside my wheelhouse. That's federal government.
Thank you.
I'm curious to hear, I know the school board was the next one on that list. As far as we have someone from the school board on, I can't see anyone.
Can't hear you, Arrow.
On the school board, is someone from the school system on?
I'm here. This is Erica.
I can
Yes.
see your name. Just curious too with, I know obviously the funding got released at the last moment that was affecting like childcare and things like that. But then have there been significant cuts or changes with like available food programs in schools and things like that also that are impacting families?
I've really been following McKinney-Vento very closely, and I know that was
so we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
It's just really low.
What it is, hold on.
We can hear you now.
That's better. That's better.
Okay. So I've been following McKinney-Vento very closely. I can say that that has not been impacted this school year. We were fully funded. Our program was not frozen. So we received our allocation on time. Now for next school year, as of right now, we were part of those 18 educational programs that were not fully funded that were put into the block. So we're waiting to see. I know the Senate has met and they appropriated funds for McKinney-Vento, but it still has to go to the House. So honestly, I don't know. And I think pretty much all of the programs, federal programs for education, are just kind of sitting in limbo. They don't know what their funding is going to look like moving forward.
But for this school year, fiscal year 26, that started in August, that ends in May or June, right now, we're good.
We're good for, yes.
I think that's important because it gives us time, right, our advocacy group and others to maybe focus on, school year 27, but understanding that this year, your team, all the things that HEAT does is right now, we're not losing staff, everything's good for this year.
Right.
I have a question, Mickey Thompson, have you noticed anything different in the call type or volume that you're receiving that we should know about that's out of the norm?
It's not out of the ordinary, but obviously we are getting a lot more calls for rent and utility assistance across the board. So, that is the largest increase of calls. In fact, we had 1,000, I think almost 1,000 more calls for the Adult Emergency Financial Assistance Program this last month than we had the month before. So I do know this time of year, there's many things around that. This time of year, a lot of other funding sources are not existent anymore. And so really at the end of, between now and October 1st, when other funding sources are maybe into November, because it takes a while for contracts to come in for some people, we do receive a high volume usually anyways. But it's rent and utilities, and it's the same that it has been. So about 60% of the calls are about rent assistance and utilities.
When you say 1,000 more this last month, Mickey, when you look at year over year, is that 1,000 inconsistent with year over year? Is it always about 1,000 more?
I don't have that in front of me, April, so I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't speak to that at this point. And you can pull up the dashboards if you want to go look. If you go to our website, kind of a plug for our website, go to firstcontact.org, and there is a section called Data and Impact, a menu at the top. And if you go, we have 2 accounts, which many of you have seen before, but we also have a community dashboard and also a disaster dashboard that really goes through kind of the needs of, what are people calling about? What are referrals we're making to based on the need categories? How many referrals to each of those agencies on those? 2 accounts is the most consistent, where you could go back, April, and look at, they have like a little trend graph on it on the lower right-hand side that you could look at as well. That's probably the quickest way to do that at this point.
I have been to your website and these dashboards before, and they're just so helpful, and they're beautiful, and I really appreciate them.
Thank you, April.
All right, Helen, how about you? You're up. City of St. Pete, anything that you can tell us? I know that article came out. There's been a lawsuit filed against the City of St. Pete. There's arrests happening with, under the no camping bill. Anything that you have that that you could tell us about all that? Was it just trying to be an alarmist and trying to get everybody upset, or is there anything true to it, or what?
So I really can't speak on the lawsuit that's going on. And quite honestly, we don't get the numbers from PD to say that there are any more arrests and or not going on because of the anti-camping bill. I'll be honest and say that I do street outreach, right? I have one outreach worker and I do outreach as well, and I see my same people there. So I wouldn't say that there any more arrests. We have not been made aware of arrests happening because of the anti-camping bill. People get arrested because they're violating an ordinance and or the law. And to Lieutenant Haish's point, they're not getting arrested because there is the anti-camping bill there. They're getting arrested because of that ordinance violation. But most of our officers, if not all of them, will educate first and people will move along.
Is there a way to track things like, and not just with City of St. Pete, but throughout the county, like with the SO, is there any way to track, like, has there been an increase, a dramatic increase, or an increase in, for example, no trespassing orders, or like the kind of stuff that would be the precursor to an arrest? Has there been an increase in those things?
No, that's one of the things that we track every month. Every month I get the report from the clerk's office of the trespassing tickets that are written, and then I get the reports from and I get a tally of the misdemeanor trespassing arrests and then the ordinance arrests, and there is no indication that there are these mass sweeps going around. It's the usual fluctuation just from the summer for right now.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And Helen, I know you can't speak about the lawsuit per se, but I know that in the law, right, there was this 5-day cure, right? So if a lawsuit was filed, then the city or the municipality had a 5-day cure period, like to be able to solve. Do you know if that process is 5 days adequate? Was that process used, or does that process work?
I can't really speak to it.
That's
Can't really
unfortunate.
speak to it at all.
It really is unfortunate that we don't have anybody who can speak to it. Like we need to
I
hear
don't know
from
that
somebody.
anybody could speak to it at all, especially with the lawsuit happening. We'd have to be very careful with what we say, how we say, when we say. So it would be nothing that we could say. Honestly, April, no one even, until I received an email, I didn't even know that we were asked or wanted to speak at this. I wasn't at the last providers joint council. So until I saw the agenda, no one had asked us to have this conversation. If I had known that, I probably could have dug down a little more and found out what I could say, but there's really nothing more that I can say. We are very cautious as a government agency on what we say, what anybody would say if there is a lawsuit out there. But I can speak to what we do in street outreach, and, because we do it every day. And so I can say to that point that there's certainly our same people are in their same spaces having the same conversations, unless we've been able to get them into shelter and or other place diverted or similar.
I think one of the points to bring to light, though, is I think this is the first potential case under that law. And so there's a lot of unknown about for interpretation, like is 5 days going to be considered if someone just simply moves along from that area, but what if they come back the next day? Was it considered resolved? That kind of thing. So there's not the court precedence in this case at all, yet to my understanding. So I think it's just going to be having to see how it evolves.
I will say on this topic that I did an interview today with Bay News 9 after a presentation I did to City Council on safe havens, I spoke to the importance of services. So it will probably be on the 5 o'clock news this evening, but the angle of the thing was stemming from the unhappy business owners, and my role was to really talk about the interventions that are effective and on this issue. So that I wanted to at least jump in and try and tell that part of the story, and attempt to differentiate crime from homelessness, because crime crime exists if you're homeless. Crime exists even more for plenty that are not homeless, more that are not homeless. Like they're separate issues. And hopefully it painted that picture well. And I chose to do it at a housing location just so that I could illustrate visually that there are solutions for this issue.
Good for you, Kevin. Thank you for doing that.
Kathleen?
I just had a quick question, and I don't mean to put Helen on the spot or anything, but again, I think part of the article a couple weeks ago about that lawsuit in St. Pete is it mentioned an ordinance that I was unaware of that St. Pete already had about resting in public, using the word resting. Am I correct in that? Like resting on a park bench and stuff?
So we have a sleep lie recline ordinance. I mean, I can't speak again. I won't speak to the lawsuit at all.
No, not at all.
I can't even speak to what the reporter said, but I can tell you we have a sleep lie recline ordinance here.
Recline? The word recline?
Recline. You cannot sleep lie recline in a public space. Like you can't lay on the sidewalk there. That's everywhere though, pretty much. I would imagine. I can't speak to other places, but you can't impede someone's ability to be able to get down a sidewalk or a public space. Yeah.
Okay. But they can lay under a tree on a blanket, in the shade. And they're playing frisbee, and then you want to lay down in a park and take a nap or something? No?
Yeah. I mean, they can lay down in the park and during the day and
yeah. Okay.
We have tons of people housed or in unhoused in a park.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Well, Helen, I'm sorry that you weren't given the heads up or the notice right before you got the agenda, that no one reached out to you, and that you didn't have an opportunity to look into what you're being asked to speak to. So thank you for what you've been willing to share, and my apology to you for that.
It's okay. It's okay. We're always going to be cautious, even if because there's a lawsuit. So,
Are there any other local perspectives on this topic?
I did see in the Doge, the Florida Doge that's been in boots on ground. I have seen those, many of those letters that went to our local governments with, a list of things that they were going to be looking at. And, some of the lists were different than each other. In other words, the lists were not consistent. I do know for the city of St. Pete, I believe that, and again, Helen hasn't had any time to look at any of this, but I did notice that there was quite a bit on housing and homeless and those kinds of outcome type data that they were looking for. Is there anything around that anybody can speak to? Like what that means, if anybody knows what that means?
I can address it for everybody, April. Hi,
Okay.
everybody. Avery. So yeah, we just finished our 2-day Doge audit, and that did ask of every department that has a federal grant to provide your contract, if you did subcontracts, those subcontract objectives, the proof of payments, proof of drawdowns, proof of monitoring of those, and your match, as well as all the policies and procedures that went with that. So for the housing department, we had to do that for every federal grant that we had. And then they asked, on addition to that, for everything for homeless that we do. Every homeless grant, every homeless project. So we had to repeat all of that for the homeless. So it was a lot of work for Helen and I and a couple other members of our team for over a week, and we got it all done. We put everything into a share drive file, and we just waited to be called for an interview, and I'm happy to say that none of our department, I don't believe any of our administration was called. So the only folks that were called down were finance, who was spending the 2 days with them anyhow. That's where they were housed, was in finance and audit. And that was really it. That was the only thing that we know. Other than that, we haven't heard how it went. And they have all of our information of everything that we do.
Good job, Avery. Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, I want to make sure, Helen, do you have anything on that as well? I don't want to
No,
jump.
I do have something else, but I want you to be able to explain yours first. I do have
Sure.
another question and a thought to April's question.
Okay, so ours was a little different, as you can, the letters was different that was published. We were asked for specific policies for the health program, so the Healthcare Services Division, as it relates to any DEI, any policies. That was one call out. We were not asked about any homeless services that we fund or provide. We were also asked, the same as City of St. Pete, for all federal grants. So the granting, the subcontracting, the drawdowns, the policies, monitoring, and then any progress reports that we provide back. And then we also were asked for any granting of funds that we do. So we had to provide all of the information on social action funding for 3 years, as well as the Drug Abuse Trust Fund. So that's what we provided from Human Services. But there was massive, amounts of information that was provided from the larger departments. So like utilities, they were looking at like the green space and resiliency, and then every single, I believe, contract greater than, I think, $10,000 had to be submitted for multiple years. I think it was since 2020. So it was a lot of information. They didn't interview any staff outside of the OMB reps and I think county administration that were on site as they had asked for.
Helen?
So April, my question is it's more of a broader question to the entire group, and probably something that we might look at in future agendas as a group, and then certainly maybe as a part of just Funders Council in general, but locally, so local dollars, right? Social action funding is local dollars. However, recognizing that large part of almost all providers receive some federal funding, and with all the changes, what does it look like for us with the current priority populations, number one being disproportionately minority groups, right? And so I'm very sensitive to that when it comes to providers, that I am asking you to pick something here, and you might be using this as a match for something federal or whatever. And so we might need to think about those priority populations. Words matter now, right? And so it's just something that we need to start thinking about. Housing first, right? In all of my applications, I'm asking you, how is your organization and or this program housing first? And if that's going to be eliminated, I think we just probably need to look at that as a whole, as a CoC as a whole, but certainly can start having that conversation, funders and providers, because I don't want to put anybody in a position where they've got to answer one thing to me and something to someone else. And so we just kind of all need to be on the same page. I know Avery and I are kind of looking at that. I brought this up. And so I'm really, really sensitive to that. We did that this year. We used the current priority populations. And I know we worked hard at figuring out there was a lot of hard work into that. But it might be something that we might need to look at again, since we're asking agencies to determine which priority population they're going to serve.
I agree, because we have contracts, even at Directions for Living, we've got contracts, in this year that we were asked to sign that still include DEI language, a requirement of my agency to, prove our DEI efforts, to prove, right, a variety of things, language that I'm just like, I just don't know why this language is still, that we're being asked to sign it. And, when I think about these lists, right, that you've described, or that Avery just described, that Karen just described, right, it's like, if those become a point of contention, for the Florida Doge group under some kind of fraud, waste, and abuse, I'm assuming that the impact will first be to you and your departments, and that the secondary impact, of course, would be to providers, and then, of course, ultimately to the people that we serve. But I just want to make sure, as I'm thinking it through, that we're not, that funders aren't getting us sideways and that we aren't getting funders sideways, right back. It's kind of bi-directional, because it's pretty hard for us even to sign agreements that are outlining this outcome or these contractual obligations that, unless you live under a rock, you've been told that you shouldn't be signing those, you shouldn't be doing those things.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up here, April, just to that, because I don't know if it's just a question or just a conversation for funders. It's certainly a conversation that we need to have together jointly, kind of figure out what you're allowed to sign and what we need to do as a funder to make sure that we're still, getting what we need as well. So I maybe a future agenda item, but certainly something that needs to happen soon.
Yeah.
Because we will be starting our next year's budget soon, our FY27 budget cycle soon. So just
Yeah, I
something
know
that
for
we all
us
need to
too.
start having that conversation about.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree because our I started working with our attorney and then looking over the executive orders and having to put all that language into our agreements already for this coming up year.
I agree
Yes,
on that too.
exactly.
I know we have our jurisdictions meetings and I don't know when we next have it, but yeah, because years ago we had come up with a standard language to put in all homeless related contracts. So we're having like the same coordinated entry, everyone requiring use of HMIS and that kind of stuff, but it also had the housing first philosophy, as part of the whereas clauses and things like that. So I don't know if that group would be good to collaborate offline, like share copies of agreements and stuff as we're getting into this, or I would assume we
It's
still
hard
want
to
to keep all
hear
the
you,
HMIS.
Hero.
I wonder why today it's being weird compared to normal. Let me see if I can.
very echoey.
I'm just at my desk. It's weird. I don't know why it's being different today. I don't see any way to up my microphone. I will do my best. I'll yell a little bit. The jurisdictions meetings, years ago we had that standard language put into all of our contracts for the coordinated entry, housing first, and HMIS. And so I don't know if that's the part we need to send out that template language from the homeless. I know there's obviously just any DEI stuff that would go in any contracts we need to look at, but particularly that in relation to this new executive order as well. I don't know if that offline group from our jurisdictions meetings, maybe that's a good place for us to send those documents around and
There
be
hasn't even
consistent.
been guidance from HUD yet, like the language changing with HUD and the NOFO, right? So you got the NOFO coming
That's
up,
true.
and that language really stems from HUD that gets carried over into local languages. So I haven't seen anything with HUD pushing a change in that yet.
No,
Well,
I've asked our HUD rep if they were going to be providing guidance because it was so many and you're reading it and it gets kind of confusing, right? So I was like, so I reached out to my HUD rep and asked them, we're going to be receiving guidance. When are the regulations going to be updated? And she didn't have any guidance and couldn't say anything for me other than providing us with the executive orders at this time.
I was meeting with Jacksonville office yesterday, and what I was advised from Lori is that in regards to any of us municipalities that have been submitting our plans, consolidated plans, any amendments to our old plans, everything is being locked down. The regional offices cannot get into them until they have gone through national office, where they're going through AI auditing for language. Once they pass through that, then they go to the regional offices where they can do their final reviews and either accept, reject, send it back, all of that. Because I had an amendment in that was taking a long time to have approved, and I needed my annual action plan put in, and that's what was going on. They had to call DC to get it unlocked. So even though we don't know what language we are to be using yet, we are being pre-monitored for it.
And I would say post-monitored for being contracted to do certain things when we talk about the NOFO. And if they're going back 3 to 5 years, those were required by the very federal government that's now saying you can't do it. And that's, I mean, so it's a
Damned if you do, damned if you don't
yeah,
situation.
right.
Yeah, I did hear the 3 to 5 years that, you know, the taxpayer dollar revenue generating, you know, municipalities, departments, that kind of thing, that the requirement was that they were going back 3 to 5 years. That has not yet been pushed down to us, to providers, but it's my understanding it has been pushed down to funders. Arrow, is your hand still up? Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Kevin, you want to move us along?
Yes, let's move on to our public comment, which is open to the group, but we have a couple of categories here in particular to referencing, which is shelters and service animals. So what's this? What is this topic?
I can speak to that very quickly. Shelters and service animals. And Helen, I know we had talked about this, but I'll just share. Disability Rights Florida had reached out to me, to HLA, and just gave us a heads up that some shelters may have been turning away service animals, people with service animals from the shelters. And so we responded to them and said, this is what we're going to do. We shared it in a provider's newsletter. We did an immediate news blast to all the emergency shelters and providers to make sure that they understood what the law is, the statute, Florida statute, as well as what's in written standards and in coordinated entry policies and procedures, CoC policies and procedures, all of that. And that's where and whenever we found that there may be some sort of question around that, then we forward it to the funder. But just a reminder, shelters and services, so service animals, not emotional support animals, but service animals that actually perform a function for a person with a disability. Whether it's in a restaurant, dogs and miniature horses can go into restaurants, can go into anywhere where a person can go, unless it creates, on a case-by-case basis, a risk to others. So if there's an out of control, which just doesn't happen, typically with a real service animal, like aggression or anything like that, that may be something to consider, but not a blanket policy that prohibits service animals from coming in. And so wanted to just get that out there.
Okay, Kathleen, did you have a comment on this or just a general public comment? You're on mute.
It was on shelters, and I just wanted to communicate because at the Lived Experience Advisory Committee meeting last night, there was some discussion about the hurricane shelter, and I just told them I would relay this concern. So there was a comment from some of our lived experience people that were at the Largo High School, and when there was an all clear, they were asked to leave, but the buses weren't running yet. And so they didn't feel safe, and they reported that it was some hours before particular buses that took particular routes came. And I just said I would communicate that to our, to the people in our HLA that work, and our CoC groups that work with that. So I'll put it out there and we'll follow up more with some specifics, but.
Kathleen, I've got some info on that actually. And Dominique, maybe I'll follow up too, because I know there was some, she was with LHS as well, but it's my understanding that in the absence of the city buses during that, or when it opened back up, that the principal coordinated to get some of the school buses there, to ask people what areas they came from, and they helped bring people back to certain areas. So that they weren't just lost out there, not knowing, totally out of their realm for where their services are, where their, usual supports are and so forth. So that did happen. And from what we had heard from street outreach and our law enforcement, that worked pretty effectively at the end, because after one of the storms the other year, it was literally just people that wasn't their normal area. They had no idea where to go. They were just wandering out, not sure what to do. So that seemed to be an improvement this year, actually. But it was the school buses that were used.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can add to that as well, because the transportation happens, right behind my seat at the EOC, and that is exactly what happened. So in years past, when it's blue sky, people leave. They start leaving the second, even before the roads are clear, before the sheriff has cleared anything. So they start leaving. This year was the first year that the school buses said they're going to start picking people up and taking them where they want to go. We had not done that previously. We were doing more coordinated, more bus routes, but this really was kind of in an effort to move everyone out quickly. We've heard positive and negative feedback about it. Some people really liked it. They thought it was more efficient to move people out, but some people just got on without a plan of where to go. And another risk is that once they're transported back to their home, if their home was destroyed, there was no real way to get people back. So, it's a ever evolving process, but shelter closures at the end of the storm, it happens very, very, very quickly. So, we're continuing to learn. Hopefully we're going to take a pass this year on any kind of real, hurricanes. We all need a break from it. But every year it's a little different. Every storm is a little different.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Thanks.
Hey, moving on, we have extreme weather updates. I know we have Aaron circling out there, but other points on this, Sherry, that you wanted to bring up?
Yes, so Megan has included the CoC hot weather resources that you can link to. I click on that link. We were wondering if there was anything else available. I believe that this was raised because of questions. I think Arrow had a question about cooling stations. I'm not 100% sure that it was her, so don't mean to put you on the spot, Arrow. But also, Pinellas County Human Services. Thank you very much, Karen and team, for helping out with some hot weather kits that HLA then was able to distribute and get some more senior volunteers to help put them together. There were a total 800 to 900 kits assembled and then distributed out to street outreach and the community fair that had just happened for hot weather through the Human Services group. That's all I have for that.
All right, other public comment. I have an open house for my newest housing project called Founders Point, August 29th, that I welcome you all to show up for. That is 2901 31st Street South at 8:30 in the morning. So anyone is welcome to come see this great new project.
What was the date again, Kevin?
August 29th, so 2 weeks from today. And the parking, just so you know, the parking for this will be, thank you to the city for, City of St. Pete for allowing us to use the park across the street, Boyd Hill. That's where the best place to park, and then we'll have our St. Pete police helping with the crossing to 31st Street. One of the residents will be singing the national anthem, so you don't want to miss that. All right, any
Will
other comments?
Elvis be making a show?
No Elvis. You know,
Okay.
that's a one-time event, you know, but all right, everyone. There's no other comment. We will adjourn this meeting at 3:13 p.m.
Thank you. Bye,
All right,
everybody.
have a safe weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.